we're gonna play it for you guys if you didn't hear it. Earlier today, Clinton at a press conference, Wolf Blitz asks him what he thinks about the rift going on between Louis Freeh of the FBI and Janet Reno, and Clinton actually said, "Well, I only know what I read in the press about it. I don't know that's not much. I don't know a whole lot about it except what I read in the press." I mean, the cliches keep rolling on, and everybody in Washington is foolishly poised, waiting for the big question, will she or won't she, as though there's any doubt about will Janet Reno appoint a special prosecutor to investigate the fundraising phone calls of the president and vice perpetrator. Now, I'm on the record, I've told you a month ago that is not going to happen. There's no way you're going to get a special counsel to look into phone calls. It just isn't going to happen. The leaks that started last week are nothing more than to serve as a cushion to blow that's going to come today. Janet El Reno walks out of her office last night, and the press says, have you got a decision? Have you got a decision? No, I'm working harder than I've ever worked in my life to come up with the right decision here. Well, she didn't say that. She's working hard. But in this administration, it means I've never worked harder in my life than I'm working on it. Here's the latest, folks. Our Janet El Reno update theme gets us in to all you need to know about.
Using her might, but not looking too bright, comes the madam called El Reno. Her prose are charades, but she keeps her critics at bay with a tongue like jalapeno. El Reno sees what she wants to see. El Reno, she'll clear them from A to Z. Some people say, why torture her name by calling her El Reno? She's full of hot air, she spins but goes nowhere, reminding us of El Nino. El Reno, she sees what she wants to see. El Reno, she'll clear them from A to Z.
Janet El Reno has until the close of business today to announce her decision about whether or not there will be a special counsel, independent counsel, look into fundraising practices of the president and vice president. Again, it's about phone calls only. She's thrown everything else out, the money launderings and the visitors to the White House, the Buddhist temple. None of that is even being looked at here. This is all about whether or not the Pendleton Act has been violated. And the standard Democratic line is, look, that Pendleton Act never applied to phone calls. Why, there weren't any phones when the Pendleton Act was written. That was just to make sure the members of Congress didn't use a heavy hand on their own employees. It never applied to phone calls. The president, vice president, their office never applied to them. The Democrats are saying things like that. But it did, and phones were invented then, and it has been updated, and it's been reinterpreted. And they asked Mr. Pendleton about it, and he said, no way, no how, no fundraising from any office for anything, for anybody, to anybody. And the Democrats just want to conveniently look past this. And what they're saying really is that they don't think that phone calls, even if they do constitute a violation of the law, are worthy of an independent counsel. And I frankly think that this is a big smokescreen anyway. And there are a lot of myths about Janet Reno now that are being put out, ladies and gentlemen. A lot of people saying one thing or the other. And I want to go through some of these. And there was an important conviction recently involving Mike Espy and an independent counsel that this Justice Department and Janet Reno actively tried to thwart. throughout its whole investigation. The first and the most often repeated myth about Janet Reno is that she's not requesting an independent counsel to investigate the Clinton-Gore campaign finance scandal because the independent counsel law requires a finding of specific and credible information that a covered person, which would mean a top Clinton or campaign official, may have violated the law. Under the law, she therefore has no basis for seeking an independent counsel. This is a standard myth that the Democrats, the liberals, are putting out, and that's not true. The independent counsel law does allow an attorney general to request an independent counsel whenever she believes a personal, financial, or political conflict of interest may exist. This is commonly referred to as the conflict of interest section of the law. How reasonable is it to assert, well, I can only appoint an independent counsel if I find evidence that somebody's guilty? The independent counsel is supposed to do that. There's clearly a mechanism here involving conflict of interest. She is not required to find specific and credible information that a covered person may have violated the law. She's not required to do that. In fact, when she testified before the Senate on May 14th, 1993, she specifically endorsed the use of the conflict of interest section of the statute in the broadest of circumstances. Myth number 2 is that Janet Reno can be relied on to conduct an independent, nonpartisan investigation. Now, that's become a joke. But the point is that whether Janet Reno has integrity or is a Clinton friend is irrelevant. The independent counsel law applies whether an attorney general has integrity or not. This business of saying her decision stands no matter what because she's got integrity. You could have the foulest attorney general in the history of America. You could have the most scummy attorney general in the world, and that wouldn't exempt him from finding and appropriating and interpreting the law properly. And because the liberals want to say, well, she's got integrity, she's her own woman, she's not gonna do the bidding of anybody else. So whatever she comes up with is right. No, not just because she's got integrity doesn't mean a hill of beans. Moreover, an actual record shows that Janet Reno can always be counted on to help the legal positions asserted by the president and his lawyers, no matter how preposterous. For instance, for 3.5 years, Janet Reno directed Justice Department lawyers to file one brief after another in federal court supporting Clinton's transparently baseless claim of civil presidential immunity in Paula Jones' sexual harassment suit. The Supreme Court rejected that argument 9-zip. It was a slam dunk. Janet Reno also filed a brief with the U.S. Supreme Court on behalf of the Clintons' outrageous attorney-client privilege claim. You remember this one. This is where the Clintons claimed that notes taken by government lawyers, paid for by you and me, involving Mrs. Clinton's private legal affairs couldn't be subpoenaed by Whitewater independent counsel Kenneth Starr. The U.S. Supreme Court refused to even hear that case, forcing the Clintons to disclose the notes to Starr. But guess what side of it Janet Reno was on? In addition, independent counsel Donald Smaltz, who's prosecuting former Ag Secretary Mike Espy for, among other things, accepting illegal gratuities, was stopped by Janet Reno from investigating Tyson Foods' possible role in the scandal. Of course, the Tysons are longtime Clinton friends and supporters. Smaltz was forced to go over Janet Reno's head to seek permission from a federal court, which granted it and overruled Janet Reno. And let's not forget this. It was Janet Reno who oversaw the firing of all 93 United States attorneys early in the Clinton administration, which is a first for attorneys general. Furthermore, her criminal division wrongfully prosecuted former White House Travel Office Chief Billy Dale. Remember that? Phony embezzlement charges, to the delight of the Clinton White House. They even asked Webb Hubbell about that last night on Hard Boiled with Chris Matthews. And Webb Hubbell said, I think it was George Stephanopoulos. We were new. We were still in the campaign mode. And I think that was a mistake to do. Oh, easy for Webb Hubbell now to say that. But Janet Reno is the one who did it. Her criminal division prosecuted Billy Dale. Of course, he was acquitted by a jury in 90 minutes. This is not evidence of an independent, nonpartisan person. From today's Wall Street Journal lead editorial, yesterday brought a conviction in an independent counsel case that this Justice Department actively opposed. A federal jury in Washington convicted Ronald Blackley, chief of staff to Mike Espy, then Ag Secretary, on 3 counts of lying to conceal $22,000 that he received from associates with business before the agency. The significance of this lies in the fact that independent counsel Donald Smaltz had to fight a battle of nearly 2 years with the Department of Justice merely to bring Blackley to trial, because at every stage, Janet Reno opposed everything Smaltz was doing. He's an independent counsel. The idea that she's got integrity is a joke. The idea that she's nonpartisan is a joke. The idea that she has any sort of interest in getting to the truth on these potential violations of the law is a joke. But I'm telling you, it's what's going to happen. She's not going to appoint. I'd be happy to be wrong about this, but I cannot possibly see this. Now you got Louis Freeh, who is, we now know, has put out this long memo. He wrote a memo to Janet El Reno, and he said, we need an independent counsel on this, and they are at loggerheads over it. They disagree as much as you possibly can. The text of his memo has not been released, but the thrust of it is known. And now the question is, to save his reputation, will he resign if she indeed does not appoint the independent counsel? This Justice Department has been compromised. Nobody's got faith in it. Everybody thinks that it's nothing more than an extension of the Clinton legal defense team. And how in the world you can exempt from investigation all of the Chinese money laundering, all of the illegal contributions that had to be given back. How you can, look, you and I know the evidence. You and I know who's been in the White House. We've had arms dealers from China in there. We've had drug dealers from the Caribbean. We've had embezzlers from Lebanon. We've had people that nobody knew who they were, how they got in there. Except that they paid big bucks. We've had some of the shadiest characters in the world walk into the inner sanctum of the White House, handing out checks. Janet El Reno says, it's not worth looking into. Don't see any violations there. But these phone calls, yes, I'm going to look at phone calls. It's tip of the iceberg. Violation of the law, and I'm not saying exempt it, but you don't need an independent counsel for that. So next question is, when will it happen? It's got to happen today. Will it happen before this program is over, providing affiliate stations an opportunity to leave the program and go to the press conference live? I wouldn't put it past them. So anyway, that's where we stand with that. And I wanted to go through some of these myths with you and then turn around and give you some facts so that you can be armed with the truth about the whole history of Janet El Reno's reign as Attorney General. Quick break. Back, we got a lot of stuff out there, ladies and gentlemen. As always, this is another one of those days that people came in and said, there's not much going on out there, Rush. There's a lot going on. Mr. Sturley, how can you say there's not going on? There's a whole... How about the fish odor story? We got a new syndrome out there, folks. We got fish odor syndrome. Human beings that stink. And it's not their fault. We've got the United States... I told you yesterday when I read you the story that the United States was going into Kyoto, Japan, putting a foot down, saying we're not going to bow to what the European Union wants. Well, we've bent over and grabbed the ankles. We've bent over and grabbed the ankles over there, and we've made a massive offer that is very much in line with what the enemies of America want us to do. Remember how I've told you about if you knew all the taxes you pay, you'd be outraged? There are so many hidden taxes. Well, wait till you hear what's going to happen to your phone bill at the first of the year. Did not happen because of the Republican Congress. It did not happen via legislation. Well, it did happen via legislation, but not directly. The FCC has all sorts of power. Your phone bill may go up 4 to 5% in order to pay to make sure that people out in the boondocks get their phone service. But the problem with it is there's no cap on how much the FCC can instruct the phone companies to raise taxes. The FCC can do it. The FCC, as Jim Glassman in the Washington Post today, can turn your phone bill into a subdivision of Form 1040. Have details on that. That's what I have. Mr. Snerdley, this is a story, I haven't seen this anywhere except USA Today, but man, does it dovetail with a lot of things that we've been talking about on this program. And there was a professor, University of Texas, who was practically tarred and feathered for saying this. But now we got the evidentiary data here. Black boys' self-esteem depends less and less on academic success as they move from 8th to 12th grade. Self-esteem depends more and more on athletics and other such things, athletic skill and popularity. But the older they get, the less academics matters to them because it doesn't contribute to their self-esteem at all. Oh, yes, I will sometime this week. Perhaps I'll get to it today because I saved it. Mr. Snerdley wants me to explain this week the deflation not being a crisis. And I frankly don't think that it is going to be a crisis, even if there is deflation. I frankly don't expect it to happen here anyway. But if it does, there are certain things about it you need to know. There are people that get hurt, Mr. Snerdley, but in terms of being a crisis, you got to watch that. You know, every problem in America is called a crisis. But I'll tell you who gets in inflation. Who gets hurt? Well, a lot of people get hurt, but people who lend money in an inflationary cycle get hurt. They lend money, let's say at 8% because of inflation. When they have to replace the money they've lent to somebody, it costs them 10%. So lenders take it on the chin during inflation. It's the other way around during deflation, and this is, do my best to explain this. It is debtors, people who borrow money, who have a lot of debt that get creamed during deflation. That might surprise you, but the reason they do is that they're paying their debts back with dollars that are worth a lot more than what they were when they borrowed them. And so a lot of their newfound cash value is tied up in debt that they can't do anything about unless their bank or lending institution will adjust the rate for them. So little things like that. I'll try to get into it sometime today. If not today, certainly this week. In the meantime, got to take a break right now. Take time out. Be right back with more in a moment, so stay with us.
You're listening to the EIB Network. Time for opinions and analysis of the news with Tom Tradip.
Once again this Tuesday morning, we're pondering random acts of violence around the USA and asking the question, why?
Detectives are doing interviews with him, and at this time, we still don't have a motive.
Why did a freshman male student at Heath High School in Paducah, Kentucky, calmly walk up to a spot at the school where fellow students were having a prayer service Monday, pull out a .22 caliber Luger, and open fire, emptying an 11-shot clip into those kids, killing 2 of them? Senior Ben Hetty says he arrived at the school lobby just as the shooting began.
I could have been one of the kids that got shot because I went around the corner, but when I went around the corner, shots were still being fired. So, I'm praying that and thanking God that I'm still alive because I could have been, injured or killed.
Obviously, classes at the school were canceled, and Paducah this morning is asking why. In Dallas, Texas, 18-year-old Lakita Redmond had just installed a new car alarm on her 1995 Mitsubishi. But while driving with a friend, the alarm began malfunctioning. When Lakita pulled over to fix it, a gray 4-door Cadillac pulled alongside. One of the 4 men in it shouted for Lakita to get out of her car. When she tried to drive away, one of the men shot her, and she was pronounced dead when paramedics arrived at the scene. For what? For a 1995 Mitsubishi? Is a human life so cheap to these mutants? Or did they just kill her for not obeying a total stranger who demanded her car? This morning, Dallas gets to ask why. And in Shelbyville, Tennessee, A 36-year-old man apparently involved in a custody dispute with his ex-wife has admitted to police that he shot and killed his 4 children.
The children it appears at this time, were murdered by the use of a rifle. It appears that they were shot several times. The bodies were then stacked on top of each other.
Austin Swing, the police chief in Shelbyville, states the obvious when he calls this crime unbelievable.
I've, in my career of 22 years, have never seen anything quite like this. And to be quite honest with you, as these citizens of Shelbyville and Bedford County learn of what has happened, I'm sure the whole community is going to go into shock.
Shelbyville, Tennessee is in mourning today, as are folks like you and me who have our own children. And we, too, are left with little more than the question, why? We don't have the answer, of course. Only the deranged killers in Paducah and Dallas and Shelbyville can offer any clue to their actions, along with those of their violent counterparts in cities and towns across the USA. But at some point, the rest of us are going to need to demand some answers so we can begin the arduous task of wresting control of our society back from those who prey upon decent people in our towns, our schools, and if Shelbyville is any example, our own homes. For Daybreak USA, I'm Tom Tredup.
Hey, joyous holiday season to one and all. Hope you get everything you want. Hope you give everything you want to give, and hope it turns out exactly the way you want it. And if it doesn't, shoot for it all next year. Keep climbing, folks. 800-282-2882. It's L. Rushbo. I want to say a little bit more about these phone calls. I want to attack. Yes, attack. The liberals always accuse me of attacking. Actually, in this case, I'm not attacking. I am defending. I'm defending something that they attack. Liberals are out there attacking anybody who suggests that making campaign fundraising phone calls from your Washington office is illegal. Hey, how can you? I mean, that's old law. There weren't even phones then, Rush. You just got nothing to hang your hat on. You'll do anything to get these guys. No, Well, I want you to think about some things here, folks. First, maybe it's true that phones didn't exist. They weren't widely available 114 years ago. But get this. 210 years ago, when the Constitution was adopted, TV, radio, email, telephones didn't exist either. Nonetheless, the First Amendment's free speech clause, despite its old age, still protects free speech over these new technologies, doesn't it? Now, the reliance on the phone calls alone is to create a far too narrow focus. But it's still inappropriate for Janet El Reno to unilaterally dismiss a federal law. It's Title 18, United States Code, Section 607, as she is doing. But here's the thing to think about. This is precedent setting. While the liberals insist that there's too much fundraising going on, which requires campaign finance reform, Janet El Reno has created a new legal loophole for everybody, where once it was unlawful to raise funds on government property, now it will not be illegal to raise funds unless they choose to enforce this against others later on. Won't that be interesting? And we're back. Here's the phone number if you'd like to be on the program today, 800-282-2882. If you would like to be on the program. Now we go to the phones. Grape Creek, Texas. Wayne, hello. Welcome to the program.
Dittos, Rush.
Thank you.
thank you for an outstanding El Reno update. That was marvelous.
Well, I think the people ought to be informed. You're only going to get some of the data that you got right here. You're not going to get it in the mainstream press. All you're going to get in the mainstream press is the ball game aspect of it, the horse race. Will she or won't she? How does the president feel? How do you feel about Free and Reno disagreeing? How do you feel about getting? How do you feel? I mean, there's some things that people ought to know about this attorney general and how she has steadfastly assumed the role of a defense lawyer. This is another thing they say. They say, well, look, Janet Reno's appointed more independent counsels than any attorney general in the history of attorney general. Yeah, maybe, but not when the investigation would include the president and vice president. She hadn't appointed any, and she won't.
That's why we turn to you for the rest of the story, right?
Well, you got it. Thank you very much. I'm glad you called.
I have an opinion about Louis Free.
Yeah.
If he has to resign, if he feels like he has to resign sooner or later, I'd really like to see him resign immediately to make a point of why he's resigning and to stand up and do the right thing or the integrity thing. But I'm not that sure what kind of moral character Louis Free is. So that's what I'd like to see him do, and I think it'd be the right thing to do.
I should tell you that others are advising him not to do that, that if he is going to resign, delay it so that it doesn't appear as though he's doing it in the midst of an emotional snit.
Would it make him look like a hero to resign over an integrity issue, or are they advising him to do that because of political reasons?
Well, when I say they, that's members of the press. That's pundits. I don't know what his official advisors are saying and how much he's depending on them. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot here with him that goes beyond morality. I mean, there's his integrity, his perceived integrity, and his willingness to. I mean, he's the director of the FBI. I mean, he's a law enforcement head honcho.
What would you advise him to do if you're his personal advisor?
Do what he thinks right. Do what he thinks is right. I don't presume tell people what to do.
I understand.
But I do think that he should do what he thinks is right and what he thinks is. Look, he is a public servant. He is the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. It's a public sector job. And so in determining what's the right thing to do, he has to take into account what's the best thing to do for the agency, what's the best thing to do for the country, what's the best thing to do for law enforcement in the future, what's the best thing to do in regards to who his successor would be, and, of course, his own, what would be the best thing for him to do in terms of his own conscience. He has to factor a lot of things here. And whether or not, I think, for example, he ought to ignore advice that says, if you're going to resign, do it, but wait for the emotion to die down so it doesn't look like you're in a snit. It won't look like he's in a snit. It's well known that he's unhappy with this decision, and it's been well known for a long time. Just as the Justice Department has leaked what the likely decision is going to be here today. We move next to Carrollton, Missouri. On the cell phone, it's Bill. You're on the Rush Limbaugh program. Hello.
Hello. Do you think that this is part of a deal that was made for Janet Reno's reappointment to stand as protector of Bill Clinton?
Yeah, I see. Here's another one of these questions. If you ask that about any other president, you'd be excoriated for insulting the integrity not only of the office of the presidency, but the occupant, and then the attorney general as well. But here, in this case, what do we know? We know that Janet L. Reno was on thin ice when it came time to survive during the second term. And we know that she wanted the job. She lobbied heavily for the job. And by lobbying heavily, what I mean is she went on national television and said she'd be honored to continue in the position. That sort of forces the president's hand. That was very, very manly in a below the waist sense. You get my point. She goes on TV before the president has announced his feelings or thoughts one way or the other about her future. And she says, I want to stay in the job. I'm honored to be the attorney general. I'll be pleasured to serve the president another 4 years. And for Clinton to then come out and say, I don't care what she wants. She's out of here. Send her back to Miami. I'm going to get somebody else. He sort of forced his hand. And so she stayed. And the logical question is, well, all right, is there a deal? Did somebody strike a deal? Did she talk to him? He talked to her, and then did he say, here's what's expected of you? And did she want the job so bad that she would compromise? Remember, all this talk about Janet Reno having integrity, I think we can refute it. She may be a decent woman, she may be a nice person and all that. In terms of legal integrity, I think there's a lot to question here. Now, I don't know that there was a meeting involving quid pro quos and instructions and conditions that she had to meet, and I'm not even going to accuse it. It's another one of these things there where you do wonder, given the people involved here, and given, I mean, this is the kind of stuff that happens in movies, and the audience gets frustrated and frustrated. The director builds you up because the bad guys keep doing, in front of everybody, things that nobody else will get away with. And they keep doing it, and they keep getting away with it. And the audience gets madder and madder, and then they do more, and they keep getting away with it in front of everybody. Everybody in the world knows that there's something really wrong, but there's nothing anybody can do about it. Until finally it all implodes and blows up, and the good guys always win, except in Disney movies where you can't count on that anymore. So it's a logical question to ask, but it's one there'll never be an answer to it unless they find a Richard Nixon tape machine that nobody knows has been there all along that has a looping reel of tape. I don't think anybody will ever get any evidence of that. Bill in West Sacramento, California. Hello.
Nice how you doing?
Pretty good.
Okay, I want to say that I think that she's going to fool everybody, appoint a counsel, and resign due to health reasons, to the phony feigning and what happened yesterday with SB's aide. She just can't take the heat no more, I don't think. I think she's a better woman than that. No?
This is interesting take here, Bill. On what basis do you form this opinion, or is it merely a wild guess?
It's a guess, more or less, but I have a feeling in her. I don't know what it is. It's just,
well, feelings matter in America in the 90s. Yeah. They really do. Sometimes matter a lot more than thought.
You know, yeah, she helped the guy out and everything, but I don't think she can take it too much longer, you know.
Because you think that the fainting spell down in Mexico was an indication of the stress that she's under.
The other disease she's got, I forget what it is.
Parkinson's. I think she's got Parkinson's syndrome, yeah.
And also for the children, you know.
You had me going there for a minute, Bill.
You got to have that one.
You're a clever guy. Do it for the children.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what. If she names one, or if she decides to name one, you're gonna have one surprise chief executive.
Well, I think
you think she'll name one and then resign and go back down to Miami to get away from the pressure.
I think she's had enough of Bill Clinton and that administration. I think she's a good woman, really. Yeah. You know.
Despite what you've learned today as a student here at the Institute.
No, not. She's doing that. You know, they do that in politics, right? You know. They cover each other. You know?
Wait a second. No, wait a second. During Iran-Contra, Ronald Reagan demanded an independent counsel to look into that. And Ed Meese, no, don't just say you understand it. There's a huge difference. The Justice Department is supposed to be not about politics. You're right, it is about politics because everything's politics with this administration. But it's not supposed to be. And during Iran-Contra, Ronald Reagan demanded an independent counsel. Ed Meese appointed one within hours. And they got and it was Lawrence Walsh, no friend of anybody inside the White House in those days. Don't. I mean, there's clear evidence that this administration, this attorney general, are in fact playing politics with this, but in previous administrations, politics hasn't reared its head, and it's not supposed to in the Justice Department. That's the whole point of it, and that's precisely why the integrity has gone. The perception of integrity has gone because it has been politicized. Well, yeah, but folks, you forget this Travelgate stuff because it's so long ago, but you had these innocent people working in the White House Travel Office. And just to review, the White House Travel Office is the place that makes travel reservations for the press to travel around, accompany Air Force One, Air Force Two, and Air Force 4. The White House Travel Office does not arrange White House travel. It arranges for the press. And Mrs. Clinton came in and said, we want some of our people from Arkansas running the travel office. And they trumped up charges against 3 members of the travel office, including Billy Dale. They fired him. No reason. And then they asked the FBI to come in and back them up on it, and the Justice Department to come in, and Janet Reno ran the investigation into it. She helped them out. She politicized the firings of the travel office firings. And from that moment on, the Justice Department looked to be a tool of this administration. Somebody ought to look. We need an independent counsel to look into that. It happened so early on that it was in the honeymoon period when this happened. That's just a bunch of inexperienced people in Arkansas. I don't know what they're doing. Give them a chance to straighten that out, Rush. Quick break. We'll be back with more in just a second.
For the children, this is the EIB Network.
It's a great time of year. Rush Limbaugh and the Excellence in Broadcasting Network off to a rousing rolling start. Phone number is 800-282-2882. It appears, ladies and gentlemen, that there are some people who think that Janet El Reno will appoint an independent counsel. We've got our second such opinion from Naples, Florida. It's Jerry. Jerry, welcome to the program.
Hi, Rush. I had hoped to be the first to tell you, but just like her namesake, Ms. El Reno is going to surprise us all.
Oh, okay, continue.
Well, she's got everything to gain. She's got a thinking leader. She can emerge from this a strong, moral victim. And
wait a minute. What do you mean a strong moral victim?
Everybody thinks that she's going to do the opposite. Everybody thinks she's going to cave. She's going to say she waited till midnight on December 2nd and made the decision because she had to for truthful, moral reasons.
So how does that make her a victim?
Well, she's also been a victim of the press. The press is going to keep up that image because she's constantly being pandered to because of her health, because of her Republican accusations. So, what has she got to lose? She's got everything to gain.
Well, she has a number of things to lose, and that is, she's been a Democrat all of her life. Now, you live in Naples. Are you familiar with her history as an attorney down in Florida in Miami?
More than I'd like to be, yes.
Well, then you know that she's got a lot at stake in her reputation as a Democrat, and she is going to put herself on the foul side of Democrats nationwide if she comes up. So I'm just addressing your question, what has she got to lose?
She can look strong. She can look independent, which she hasn't all along.
So you're saying that this decision is going to be made on personal basis. She's going to say, what's in this for me, and make the decision on that basis.
Exactly. And
she's not going to look at the law. She's not going to look at the legal circumstances and all the appropriate United States laws and decide on that basis. She's going to decide, I want to go out strong. I want to go out respected. I want to go out independent.
No. She could have done that 2 weeks ago, and everybody expected her to, but now she's going to surprise everybody and really look good for the first time in her life to a lot of people.
Yeah. Now, you sound very confident about this. So are you going to be stunned if this turns out to be untrue?
A little bit, but it's people like you that have fortunately made the case so effectively that the press doesn't about why she should. And if we do go down in flames, at least you're on record, and we appreciate that, and we thank you for it.
Well, you're very kind. I don't know that. I mean, there are a lot of us who have endeavored to tell the truth about all of this and to get the facts of this out. The press in this case, I mean, I think that they are just entertained by the horse race aspect of it, as I keep saying. Will she or won't she? What does it mean? I mean, they can look into this law as easily as I can, and they can review her history as Attorney General, and they can look at these so-called myths that her supporters are pronouncing on her behalf and weed through them. The fact that they don't indicates to me that I don't think they think it's a big deal. I don't think that the mainstream press and the inside the Beltway culture thinks that what went on throughout these last 5 years in the fundraising area at the White House is any big deal anyway. If they thought that it was, they'd be far more interested in it in a substantive way. It's just entertainment for them. Just like Iraq is an entertainment for them. I think that if you listen, some of the Clinton legacy people, have you heard this? They're lamenting the fact that there hasn't been any big events in which the president could engage and then shine big and bright. Well, here comes Iraq. And so this is it. This is the event that'll allow Clinton to establish his legacy. Rather than dealing with the substance of it and doing the right thing and finding out what is really at stake and what we ought to do, everything's a scorecard. Everything's a scorecard or a focus group questionnaire. Right now, as far as most in the mainstream press are concerned, and a lot of substance is missed as a result. Let's take a break and quickly get back here in just a second with more. Don't go away.
You're listening to the EIB Network.
You know, today it's no big deal that the NHL is in Florida, North Carolina, Southern California, and Arizona. But back when Gordie Howe started in the league, the teams were all in the Northeast and in Canada. They expanded a little bit in the 1960s and 70s, but it took the World Hockey Association to really move big league hockey to the South and to the West. That's why this week in 1977, Gordie scored goal number 1,000 for the New England Whalers in Birmingham, Alabama.
McKenzie with a rebound in front of Gordie Howe. He scores! Gordie Howe is 1,000th goal! The 1,000th goal for Gordie Howe.
They would sit and say the national anthem, say the prayer, sing Dixie, and then fight like crazy. They had a fighting hockey club, and it was really funny. One day in the lineup, the guy didn't even come up with a stick. He just started a fight. And you figure, what in heaven name's going on? They had some tough kids there.
I'll tell you, compared to Gordie, everybody was a kid. He was 49 then.
The goals weren't as important to me as what the longevity was. That's what I was after.
He's not kidding. Just this year, he played in the opening game for the minor league Detroit Vipers at 69 years old. I'm John Madden on the Sports Fan Radio Network.
Back always on the cutting edge. Rush Limbaugh to Westport, Massachusetts. This is Vic. Vic, I'm glad you called. Hi, happy to have you with us.
Hi, Rush. It's an honor to be on.
Thank you.
My question is pure and simple. I just struck me really strange that Bonnie Frank was on Fox last night doing damage control for Janet Reno and this whole.
Wait a second. You saying he was on Fox last night?
Yeah.
What show?
Well, it wasn't It wasn't.
What time
was it? It wasn't O'Reilly. It was.
What time was? Just tell me what time it was. I'll tell you.
It was around supper time.
When do you eat supper?
Well, it's around 5:30, 6 o'clock.
5:30, 6 o'clock. I think it was Fox on Politics.
Yeah.
Well, now that's interesting because just the day before, Barney Frank was on Meet the Press, doing the same thing. He was defending Janet Reno's integrity and all this, and I said yesterday about that, I said, of all the people that the Democrats could trot out, why have they chosen Barney Frank? I mean, here is a guy whose male lover got caught running a male prostitute ring out of Barney Frank's basement. The guy's name was Stephen Goby. He was This guy was trolling local school playgrounds, looking for young, unsuspecting boys to bring back to the playground, the basement playground. And Barney was asked about it. I said, I didn't know anything about this. A typical liberal thing. I just got suckered in by this guy, and I'm sorry. He apologized. But Barney Frank also has a sister named Ann Lewis, and she's part of the White House communications office. I mean, so but it of all people to drag out and start defending the integrity of Janet Reno, it really is curious. So if he was on Fox last night, it means that the White House is offering him up to people.
He was the local paper. He was on the front page of the local paper, doing exactly what he was doing on Fox last night. And you can understand it in a local paper, but on national TV, it just didn't make any sense. I could see somebody like Biden or Torricelli or somebody like that. It has credibility throughout the country, but I mean, we're perfectly aware here in Massachusetts. Anybody that's not a diehard Democrat, that Barney Frank doesn't have a heck of a lot of credibility as far as.
Well, but he does in Massachusetts. After all this was brought out about Barney, he got the highest election majority he's ever received. Now, there could be some connection between Barney Frank and Janet Reno on the, shall we say, a cultural side. Ladies and gentlemen, the lifestyle side, and there may be that as a part of this. I don't know, but maybe that they can't find any other Democrat to go out there and do this. Who knows? But it is curious. Back in a minute.